It's a big one today. A lot of people registered for this, like 130 something. So great to have you guys on. Clearly a hot topic. I honestly thought no one would show up really for this one, Steve.
Why?
Who'd have thought everyone was interested in nasality? I mean, come on, get a life.
But still, welcome. Still, thank you.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's all that. Yeah, all that stuff. Yeah.
The truth is, though, I think that's a great point to make to begin with. Is that I think the reason why nasality on its own as a word or a thing is boring, but it's what it's been built to be in the singing industry. I think that's what makes it exciting for people, and the reason why people want to find out more about it. But equally, that what it's been made to be, its perception of nasality in the singing industry, which makes it exciting, actually turns out to be a load of nonsense anyway. Right?
No, I guess the caveat, Steve, is in our opinion.
I mean,
it's a load of codswallop.
I'm going flying in there. It's early morning. I'm going flying in.
No, it's totally true. That's the reason why we got basically stuck into the article anyway. And in the article in iSing, there's a bunch of stuff in there. Basically, there's a little bit of sciencey stuff. There's a few quotes from scientists here and there. How to test for nasality, reducing nasality with some exercises, which we may cover a little bit as part of the webinar. Would urge you to go and read the article for the full explanations of stuff. However, what was great about today's webinar and about the way iSing has collected information is that we have a bag load of questions. I like Anti's comment there that he or she, I don't know, had to look up what codswallop meant, which is colloquial for, can I say that S word?
I'd say nonsense again. I mean, we lost you there, mate.
Sorry, mate. I was switching back to low def.
Oh, good. Thank you so much. Yeah, codswallop, nonsense. But either way, we're here. Welcome. Shall we get into the first question, or did you want to?
Yes. Not really. I mean, I think we're going to cover a lot of stuff in here, mate. Anyway.
Yeah.
So we can get into the first question. Have you got them up or?
Yeah, I can read them. Yep. Yeah, like you say, this is brilliant because there's so many awesome questions. And the first one is from Anita. Please go over the different causes of nasality and how you go about identifying the particular cause in a client and how you go about correcting the issue depending on the cause. So what do you say about that, mate?
Well, I reckon that's the webinar done, isn't it, really?
Yeah. It's kind of the article,
she's gone and got greedy. Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's a few different causes. Quite often the tongue is the cause, in that its distance between it and the soft palate smaller. Sometimes because of tongue root tension, for instance, if you say like the vowel or the consonant ng, and then like we always do, we do an impression of Lionel Richie. Oh yeah. And sometimes we can get nasality from tongue positions that are retracted, and not only retracted but raised and retracted. That can be one thing. Also, when the larynx or throat is a little bit constricted or risen, sometimes that pushes the tongue high, and then that sound gets directed into the nose. The soft palate can hang low in some people who may have like a condition or a late palate or one that's not functioning well. That can be it too. And sometimes it's just dialect.
Yeah.
Like it might be just you know, French vowels and whatever, like on, don. You might be at risk of nasality there. So that could there's some of the causes of nasality and the most common ones. Which ones do you see most often, Steve? Do you reckon?
Isn't in terms of sounds? Or
Yeah. What kind of?
well, that's what I was going to say is that another massive part of this again is we like to compartmentalize things in every aspect of life, but this nasality thing, I think if you put 10 different people's perception of nasality next to each other, none of them would be the same. Because they all have a slightly different sound and are created in a slightly different way. They've got to be because, as you just mentioned, all of the different reasons for it actually happening in the first place. You know, so we really can't pinpoint a reason with a particular person. We just need to go, okay. There is an element of it was sounding like there's an element of over nasality here. So how do we go about changing that? I think is always the best way forward. Do you know what I mean? Instead of like hanging around going, what in particular, like the soft palate is often actually quite tricky to play around with a soft palate. Whereas if we try and encourage I want to say balanced sound, do I? Definitely don't want to say balanced. A lovely tone, a tone that indicates everything's set up in the right place. Then that can often be more more beneficial for the singer in the long run.
Yes, nasality could be there to compensate for something else that's going wrong. So overall balancing the voice could easily be a cure, if you like, for anything that's nasal and unwanted.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah.
Just to kind of answer your question there about which one do you see most, I don't know about you, but I often see a nasal thing going on with young boys who are looking to aid their capacity to sing higher.
Right.
And obviously there's some sort of pharyngeal manipulation going on there in order to increase the first formant. And that could hang over to later life. That posture, it probably will do, you know. So jumping on that straight away, getting a kind of a feeling of you can go a little bit higher. Nay. You can get a little bit higher doing that at the time, but sticking on it for a while could actually encourage some less than optimal vocal tract postures, which then you deal with, and then you don't get so much of the nasality.
Exactly. So that could, for the person who posted the question, I forget, is Anita. Sorry. Yes, Anita. If you want to try and figure stuff out, like Steve said, sometimes we're going to go into it a little bit soon, but the raising of the larynx, or using a twangy sound and the link to nasality could be one of the reasons why this is happening. And we'll talk a bit about it later, but you can try things like if you lower the larynx and it goes away a little bit, that could tell you something about the constriction in the throat a little bit, right? For instance, if you sing with the tongue out and it cleans up the sound, that might tell you something about tongue tension or the tongue position in the mouth. Alternatively, when it comes to the soft palate, like Steve said, messing around with the soft palate is actually a bit annoying, lacks success a bit, and I find is a bit crippling in terms of how many things you've got to do as a singer, and now I have to mess around with my soft palate. But if it's necessary, then it's necessary. But if you choose a B consonant instead of an M consonant, often, well, that will lift the soft palate. If that cleans up the sound, then that will tell you something about the soft palate as opposed to an M where it might be more like that. Yeah, that could be some of the ways in which you could figure them out.
Yeah, and that's a great point there, mate. And I think it was in the article. If not, there's another book that I cannot remember. I was just trying to look for it then, but I can't remember what it is. But if somebody's looking to get a bit more intense with the feeling of the soft palate and maybe changing the relationship when saying certain words, feeling what it feels like to go from an M to a B or an to a B can be quite intense psychologically, but can definitely increase awareness.
And you're talking like
and somebody that is overdoing it, let's say, you'll get a world of joy or world of craziness.
What entertainment?
That's the word I meant to say. Yeah.
Yes. Just post it on Candid Camera. But yeah, to be is a really cool way of figuring that out, man. Okay, let's get to Selena.
Just to say, because it doesn't matter, like rebalancing, if they've got particular words that are going to drive them towards the old thing of overdoing nasality in their sense, then like M's and N's, then they might still just take the singer overboard every time they approach one, no matter how much work they've done on balancing the rest of the voice. Yeah, so next up, Heather.
Okay,
after
Selena.
Oh, Selena. Okay.
Oh, no, Heather. Yeah, you're right. Sorry.
After
what specifically do you like to discuss regarding nasality after sinus surgery affecting mixed voice? Wow. This is one that I might have to put my hand up and go. I wouldn't be entirely sure about that.
No, well, I would. The first question I would say is, because without getting a surgeon on board, logically I would just say, how long has it been since the surgery? Because if there's been sinus surgery, there's bound to be some sort of after effect swelling, which will affect the cavities. So in terms of affecting mixed voice, like we know in general, if somebody has a cold, or there's some sort of obstruction up there, we know that often we like to feel certain feelings from the effect of the minor nasal resonance that we might get, or the fact that we might be confusing that with the amazing resonance that we feel in the mouth that trickles into the face. So whether it's that we're not feeling the face resonance, or whether it's the fact that there's just some we've got zero nasal resonance, and then we sound like we've got a cold, we might start to change what we're doing with our instrument lower down. So we might start to manipulate a good posture or a normally good setting to try and get this feeling that we had before the sinus surgery. And which might destroy previous greatness, and also may never actually get to the result that we want. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And you just never know the situation, do you? Like, no. It may create a change in energy if in singing. There might be slightly different pressures in the voice that can disturb you or not. But like you can perfectly reach high sort of mixy sounds without any nasal resonance, with a blockage. And like you said, we've sang on a cold. We could still achieve the same sound. It's just the consonants that go through the nose sound a bit mental. If that nasal problem, whatever the surgery was correcting, if that created postnasal drip or mucus, then chances are you could have been singing in a state of inflammation on the vocal folds themselves, and you got that scenario, and now that's cleared up. You may experience more energy in your voice for sure. Or you just, like with people with tonsil surgery and stuff, or any kind of stuff like that, just changing a slight thing after you've been using it for 20 years delicate balance in the beginning may be off-putting, but I've certainly trained people back to feeling normal after that. So I think in any case, there's a way forward, isn't there? After surgery, it's not going to trash someone's mixed voice. I think a lot of ENTs say, "Oh, you won't be able to sing in the same way after surgery," and I just don't think that's true.
Because so it's more about the way that singing felt before. If it is changed by the surgery or swelling or cold, then what the singer then does to change or try and achieve what they wanted to achieve before. As you said, mixed voice isn't the cold shouldn't affect mixed voice. If it did before this surgery, then in fact it could actually work as the surgery and swelling or cold could work as a great time to train in a balanced voice if it was being affected by the nose in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what. Yeah, if the presence of nasality, just singing that as part of the whole condition.
Yeah.
With a freer nostril, yeah, it's going to feel different for sure. Yeah.
Okay. So
Sulena. Yes, Sulena. Go ahead and read that.
Tips in training students to redirect their energy and focus from nasal to diaphragmatic technique.
We're going to need Selena to clarify diaphragmatic technique because I'm not quite sure. I'm not familiar with that terminology. So so if you're on the call, please do give us a shout. But then we'll move on to the next one and wait to hear from you. Okay, reader. Oh, John Dan. Okay, read his one, mate.
I often read that some singers use neti pots or steam inhalers to clear nasal passages. Is this something that you do? And is it something else to include as part of overall vocal health?
Mate, you're good with this, aren't you?
Oh, I love it. I love a.
You do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love it.
I do love it. Honestly, though, word from the top is it's a brilliant thing to do. Of course, there are places where some people, it may not work for you, like after surgery, or I'm not sure what the other circumstances are. So check out for yourself. If you're doing it and it doesn't produce nice feelings, then go to your doctor about it. But for the most part, nasal rinse, whether it be with the squeezy bottle, which is what I use, or the neti pot, which is a little less intense, is a great way to clear out the sinuses. If we think about it, pathogens and bacteria that go into the nose, infiltrate the nose on every single day, can, dependent on our level of defense, rear up the tissue. And then it goes, no, you don't belong here. And sometimes if we are oversensitive, it would treat it as like a real foreign invader. And then the inflammation process starts. The tissue swells, mucus is formed. And then that's when we get snivelies. That's where we get like postnasal drip. That's where we get the folds and turn to slugs, fat little slugs, because they've swollen as well as a result. So, and even the pharynx, I don't think there's any studies on it at the moment in terms of pharyngeal swelling and its effect on contemporary singing. As far as I'm aware, there isn't a study on that. But you, as a singer, your relationship with the pliability of your pharynx is all, is going to have a massive effect on how you feel when you're doing things. So, and let's be honest, when that mucus is trickling down there, it's all going to get affected. So that's why clearing out the nasal passages with saline solution is cracking.
Can you use a regular garden hose?
Yeah.
Yeah, just put right up to max, yeah?
Yeah. And pinch the end. No. It's I can go and grab mine if you.
That was a joke, guys. Just in case anyone does that, that was just.
1 second.
Laughs.
1 sec. I'll be back in 1 sec.
Okay, I'll run on with another question. I bet he's going to get his netty. Okay, so I hope that was helpful, John. This is summer. Is using nasality better for vocal flexibility? And again, we have to clear up this semantics or whatever, or terms of whether you mean genuine nasality or whether you mean, here he is, that's a nasal rinse, right?
And these
Great.
and people say that you can mix your own, because this is sodium bicarbonate, and the way to do it is bicarbonate and sodium chloride mixture. But and you can mix them yourself by buying it in bulk. But I mean, you can buy these packets which are pre-mixed, and it just, barrier of entry to doing it every single morning is just lessened by buying these packs. You can get them online.
Yeah. Absolutely,
I definitely recommend that.
And what I like about that's a company, a medical company, clearly started by someone called Neil, which is cool.
Medicine.
Neil Med. It creates what I like about that. Anyway, Steve, the question was, does nasality make or increase vocal flexibility? And what I'm just asking is, if you mean kind of bright, like twang, and confusing that with genuine nasality, then I would say, yeah, I think on a lot of levels, the sort of the acoustic changes that you get from being a little bit more, yeah, that kind of, instead of that thing, which is kind of like, some people might be like, oh, the first one is more nasal, and the truth is it's not real. It's just the perception of the sounds. It's close to being a nasal posture, but it doesn't quite make it. And that's just normally called like twang, basically, on different levels of twang, lots or less. But twang can increase vocal flexibility, in my opinion. But if you mean genuine nasality, I wouldn't say letting any energy get killed by the nose. I wouldn't say that would increase vocal flexibility. I would say that would hinder it. Any thoughts on that, Steve?
Yeah, well, I would, with all the questions, I'd ask what. I was just trying to think about where the question came from to try and give more help. So, is using nasality better for vocal flexibility? Is that because the singers you work with or yourself, Summer, has noticed benefit from singing like that, and it helps you? And it's helped you in some way, helped you kind of skip around the notes in some way. And if it has, for the song that you're doing or the notes you're doing, that sound, which may or may not be nasality per se, it may just be a slightly different pharyngeal shape or something. Whatever it is, do it. Like, if it helps you at that time.
But yeah. If it's working, exactly. And it does bring about, mate, I mean, this is opening up the next question is, or the next two questions, and I think actually many more in this list, is the difference between twin nasality, because I don't think we want to argue it just for the sake of friggin' arguing. And have to be correct, and it's like, I think when communicating in the pedagogical world and whatever, it's important to be, or to mean what you say, not vaguely. So we have to get terms correct as teachers to each other, and also so we can craft exercises, we understand what the differences are, so our students get benefit as well. And I think twang and nasality, let's say, they're different, and when you hear them actually in their true forms, when you genuinely hear like a nasal sound in there, like that, right? When you genuinely hear that, you're like, oh no, I don't want that. I don't mean that. I mean, yeah, I mean that thing, right? That's when we get to make the choice. But I think nasality and twang has come about because it's been perceived as nasal, because it's a similar posturing in the throat. A teacher, or many teachers in the past, have gone, just make it more nasal, and there'll be quite a few singers who have taken that information and done the right thing with it, which is bring it more into a twang that doesn't necessarily put that sound into the node, hence it becomes incredibly resonant and free. Whereas other people, which Steve and I have definitely met in the past as well, have come in going for the same thing that was the right thing, but ending up with exactly what was asked of them, which is a completely nasal voice, like that kind of thing. And that's why this debate is important. It's not for the sake of just being correct on the terms. It's because when people go for nasality, they sometimes get it, and that's the problem.
Nice.
What are your thoughts, Steve?
Yeah. Yeah, I love what you said there, because it just comes back to that again. It's the difference between perception of sound, and I think most people will be talking about an element of brightness that comes into the voice every now and again that can be overdone when they're talking about nasality, which some people would define as being twang. And so if you're down that road, I think, and it's working out, I think that's it's good. It's all good. But then the biggest issue comes is when people perceive that brightness and go, that person sounds amazing because they're bright and it's lovely. And, oh, and how do you get that? Oh, you do it with twang. And, and then this kind of posture's forced with a pre-notion of it needs to be in my nose. That's the biggest issue with this nasality thing for me. And so, which is why this question is so good, because I just think it's all the same thing. But aiming for that posture, and if you want to work towards twang because it helps for a moment, then work towards it by changing the right things, as opposed to aiming for the nose.
Yeah, right. It's like that singing in the mask sort of thing. Like,
yeah,
that's focusing, but we need the function. We need the functional move. You know, that happens because we do something else. So focusing on that, like if you feel nasal vibrations, like you say, that doesn't mean you're nasal. Doesn't mean there's nasal resonance. It just means there's a great energy in the system that is going through bones and tissues to your nose. Structurally, when it comes to nasality, we often see it as where the tongue, we get nasality a lot from the tongue. So if it's kind of like raised, like an NG. The thing about twang or producing twang is it creates a quite similar shape to the tongue and quite a similar posture. So I think that's why we just perceive them to be so close to each other. Plus, when someone brings about twang in certain situations, you get an increase in energy, acoustic energy, because something's just got high harmonics and maybe it's helped the vocal folds out and now they're operating brilliantly. Suddenly you get some sensations here because it's so intense. It still doesn't mean you're putting sound in your nose or using your nasal cavities to sing. It just means they're from another posture altogether. And that's why it's important, but it's doubly important for anybody on this call who's a coach, because if you're still perceiving twang as nasality, then there's a really good chance you could lead someone into the wrong thing. And it's so important to know what's truly going on underneath.
Yeah, brilliant, mate. That's
anyway, and that was the question from Chess. Chess was the person that originally asked that. But also Mark from Sing Free Now asked that. Idan also asked that, but also mentioned the difference between pharyngeal sounds in addition to that, Steve. So nasality, twang, and pharyngeal, which is a term people might be familiar with. What would you be able to clear up what kind of you mean by pharyngeal, do you think?
Well, again, just definitions here can differ across the whole industry. But as far as I'm aware, people use the word pharyngeal for this similar thing to twang. It was just from a different voice system, as far as I'm which is again, we're manipulating, which originated from a manipulation of the space in the throat, which creates this sound. So it's understand the confusion, Aidan, but it's kind of all the same thing.
Yeah. And you know what? I find it a funny point there, because you know that in any case in singing, you're going to feel resonance close to the beginning of the tube, and the beginning of the tube is your larynx, or where your larynx starts, right? And the larynx moves up and down. So whatever happens, you get resonance bouncing around, and there's points in the tube that you would feel resonance. And if you raise the larynx pretty high, the beginning of the gets raised as well, you know, and sometimes that may get high enough that the beginning of the tube is sitting in the upper part of the pharynx, in which case, if there's any interaction with acoustic energy there, it might feel quite pharyngeal. Whereas I think a lot of coaches may see that the pharynx itself is a completely separate chamber or area of resonance. Equally, you do other things with the mouth. There's often sensations felt at the end of the tube or the opening of the tube, and if you change your mouth shape, there all of those areas of resonance are going to move about as well. So, yeah, like you said, it's all really the same thing. I don't think it's a new spot. I think it's the same spot. It's just moved up a little bit with the different shape of the tube. Hence why pharyngeal is just as Ginevra Williams puts it, it's just an adjective. You know what I mean? It's just describing what's happening, but can you change it? I guess if you raise your larynx, you're going to feel it, because that's the start of the tube now, right? So it's an interesting conversation anyway. Yes, let me fire another one at you, mate, because we got through those nasality and trebly ones. I've recently started developing my screaming technique to the point where I almost can't feel any pain or struggle anymore, depending on the length and pitch. However, I am aware that I'm supposed to center my screams of my face, nasal, while at the moment I believe it mostly comes from my throat and obviously my core. I would like to learn more about nasality. Apologies for any wrong terms that I might have used. What comes to your mind there, Steve?
Brilliant, Stefan. This is a cracking question, and glad that you're not feeling any pain anymore. But
he's a little bit still.
I almost can't feel any pain. Oh, okay.
Almost.
I would say, well, so would we say that? Sorry if I get this wrong, Stefan, but would we say that the slight pain, is still coming from, as you say, while at the moment I believe it's mostly comes from the throat, not the pain. You're talking about your sound in that instance, but so I'm taking that the fact that you're saying that your sound mostly comes from your throat as opposed to your face means that you're feeling a bit in your throat. That's where I would go with that. In which case, I would say that the tricky thing is that you're in the screaming world, which, and I've often found that with extreme styles, the style itself dictates the intent of the singer, meaning like, I sound, so I'm going to do whatever it takes to get there, as opposed to what's good for my voice at this time and how can I make everything feel good. And so my answer to that is that if things are working out, it just may take a little bit more time for you to get lose the pain altogether. And what you'll probably find at that point in time is that by losing the pain, you've also released some of the tension in and around the larynx, and therefore things are going to be set up a little bit nicer. And as a result, you're going to feel more brightness in your front of your face. And how do you do that? I mean, I don't know who you work. I mean, obviously, I guess you're working with somebody at the moment in order to relieve some of the pain and struggle that you have been finding. But there are a million different ways to try and relieve tension in the larynx. It just takes a bit of time. But it seems like you're on the right route.
Yeah. Good shout, man. And I think it'd be really good if this person, if they weren't working with someone, really began to, because it could be very easy to go down the wrong route with this. And I'm not sure if nasality, genuine nasality, will play a part in helping distortion. Rather, twangy singers or singers that use that kind of posturing can often slip into distortion easily. So let's say, not necessarily putting sound in your nose, but creating twang might be helpful. But yeah, we're definitely not experts on this for sure. Sorry, Stefan, but there's plenty of people out there. If you need some recommendations, please do get in touch with iSing. We could send some over.
Shall I read Marcella's?
Yes, go for it.
Low larynx musculature relaxation and free airflow through upper palate to strengthen resonance and head voice nasality.
I'm finding that difficult to fully understand. I think, I don't know, we might be getting stuck with some questions, and it's only because the world of singing is so varied in terminology, and it's especially if someone's come from a classical background, there'll be much more talk about how things resonate that we would consider irrelevant, and vice versa for the purposes of our different styles. So I think that's where some of these questions will get a little bit lost, in which we should move on from them, I think.
Yeah.
And then if there's something else that we can talk about in addition to that webinar, then we would happily take those questions just to clarify it. But mate, I hit this one from Marilyn. Placement re-hitting low notes, and I think Marilyn left a comment earlier. She's going for a little bit of nasal tone / raising the larynx in order to hit low notes. Can you hear me?
Oh yeah, you broke off an in there, mate.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So, what are your thoughts on that? Hitting low notes with a particular focus on using nasality, or possibly just raising the larynx?
I think that low notes. What we're talking about again is it? And sorry, just for the confusion, but it is. I guess it is tricky to understand exactly what's happening at the time. But oftentimes, low notes. What we're really talking about with nasality is brightness again in the low, which has come from just increasing the energy, as opposed to what can often everything can get a bit kind of dark and muddy in the low notes, and I'm kind of guessing that maybe that's the comparison we're making here, is that oftentimes we will the larynx would overdrop and everything gets a bit dark, but just by manipulating the spaces again, we often get a bit of brightness in the low notes, which often people will describe as nasality because it feels different to maybe the way that they used to speak or used to sing down there. That would be my summary of it. What would be your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, it's really common advice, isn't it, to bring a bit more twang to the low notes, to give them some presence, especially in theatre. You see it a lot in theatre. But I think that, like, if this is your low range, I mean, I've tried applying this before, like trying to get some of that twang in the bottom to give it some more bite. But genuinely, the very low notes, like the bottom 6 or 7, I have to learn my larynx. I can't bring twang to it. It has to. I just can't. There's no other way around it. So I would say, Marilyn, it really depends how low you're talking about, and if it really is the extreme part of your range. I think bringing nasality to that might be a little bit of a mismatch. But again, you just have to try it out to try that one.
Yeah. Oh, and
the next one,
Amy just says, how often do you use a sinus rinse? Daily, Amy. It's a beautiful feeling. I don't think there's any need.
Isn't it?
Well, think about it this way, though. Right? There's two things I want to cover. This two things. One thing I love about it is it makes me feel like I've just got up and I've been surfing. You get a slight salty kind of feeling and taste. Secondly, think about everyone who's walking around without doing it, and the bacteria and carnage that's in the nose.
Good.
Next.
You can read it, mate.
Where are we going?
Simon.
Simon says...
I'm just calling you Simon, Steve. Just calling you Simon. No, Simon Mercer. It was just how to get rid of nasality, essentially.
All right. And I think you covered that at the start, didn't you? Kind of tongue spaces in the back, moving the tongue out, practicing with the tongue out.
Yeah, and it might seem like what's like a lyric that we could sing? What was I working on today? It seems a bit mental to sing with the tongue out the mouth, but I was singing "How Does Say You Won't Let Go" by James Arthur go again. I met you in the dark, you let me out, you made me feel it feels a bit weird to do tongue out singing, but in someone that is singing a little bit like I met you in the dark, and you get that quite a lot with cool techniques now. Dog, I left you all. That kind of sound. You often get a little bit of nasality in that by singing out. Again, with musical theatre, you can get it. Alternatively, if it's too weird to sing with lyrics, ma 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 ma, to just do one vowel out. And in the article, we talk about soft palate raising, sometimes larynx being low, or using B consonants, ba 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 ba, because that might lift the soft palate a little bit, and you may get a result from that.
Yeah, know that it's going to be a long journey.
Anything to add?
Yeah, well, I'd say mostly the removal of this thing is a long journey. I know we say that most things aren't singing, but this really is, because it's often created over the course of years or a lifetime. Whether it be from accent, as you say, or as a child, you've adopted a slight. I've seen and read that there's a lot of children will become mouth breathers, just from And if you've had particular difficulties as a child with nasal problems, then you're going to be more of a mouth breather than others, and so that will then develop into your later life. And that will then in turn change the way in which your soft palate is behaving, which will have an effect on the sound. So tons of different reasons, as where's that soft palate moving when you say certain words, so even certain consonants. It's all going to be different, but it's very, very subtle and often very ingrained. So it will take a time to remove. But just keep on working at it daily, and you should see some differences over the course.
Yeah. There's a lot of advice on the internet with regards to tongue tension as well. So even a little bit of research on yourself will probably even solidify some stuff. Shall I hit this one from Ree?
Yeah.
I would love to learn multiple exercises to help clear out a nasal tone. I know of some, but they don't always work with every student, so I'd love to know more. Oh, yeah, that's much the same.
Yep.
When it comes to it, just what springs to mind, Ree, is sometimes if you're getting a better sound on an E vowel, or any vowel that's forward, versus any vowel that's the back vowel, like R or R or ooh, then quite often the tongue is just a bit too retracted. So trying to modify those vowels, E, I, E, I, I, trying to colour them with E, so they're more ooh, 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 instead of ooh. you can even start to do that. That can be more live in melodies and lyrics. But there's another extra one.
That's what he said, Ree. He said E because the tongue.
Yeah, it's an E vowel. Sorry.
Okay, what is the difference in? This is from Chris.
Go on.
Chris Abdo. What is the difference in sound between changing your sound color by closing the nasal port versus lifting the soft palate? Also, can you separate out the two? For example, open the nasal port but a high soft palate. Lower the soft palate, close nasal port. Wow, that's a great question. I don't know the answer to that. I don't. I'm not sure. I mean, yeah, interesting question. What are your thoughts on that, mate?
Well, I mean, my instinct is to say that that they're linked, and that if you're gonna raise the soft palate, you're gonna get some closing of the nose. But whether they are incredibly, what do you call it when you disassociate them? Independent. Whether they are independent or not, or whether just you raise your palate 80% so that your nasal port isn't fully shut. Does that mean they were independent? Does that mean you raised your palate but opened your nasal port? No, I don't know. I just think that just means you raised your palate but just not as much as full. And that's my kind of instincts. But goodness me, like maybe that might help you. But I always come down to the fact with the soft palate and stuff like that is I don't know of the impact of that in terms of sound quality for a contemporary singer. I'd love to know the effect of that, because the way I always come back to in the article, I mentioned this piece of research by Johann Sundberg, which talks about high-end opera singers using soft palate lowering, if you like, a little bit to open the nasal port. So in his article, it says that they're linked, not independent. Some energy into the nose is a way of, first of all, dissipating too much energy. So it's a useful dampener, but opera singers sing at incredibly high volumes. Volumes that contemporary singers will never sing at. So I think to dissipate energy into your nose for the sake of not overcooking it is not a strategy for contemporary singers. Also, by lowering the soft palate and letting some energy into the nose, it has a slight effect on the singer's formant and possibly the first formant, and that's for the geeks out there. It's basically an area of resonance, and the area of resonance just becomes a little bit wider and less peaked. So it may help with high energy transitions, or it may help with the singer's formant, which opera singers need to be heard over orchestras. But again, would I spend my lifetime trying to figure that out? I don't think I would, because again, it's related very much to the functions of a high energy opera singer, and that is not my field of work or Steve's really, but and it's not conclusive. So I guess we just need to know more about its relevance to us, but I'm leaning towards the fact that it's not.
But yeah, and if it is relevant to you, Chris, and your work, if you're a teacher or whatever, then yeah, you want to go ahead and do the study, let us know. It'd be great to know. But as far as I'm aware,
you stopped a little bit there. Say that.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I just think if that is Chris's field and he's really interested in it, teacher or not, wants to go ahead and do the study. Because as far as I'm aware, there isn't a study on the isolation of those two things and its effect. Be great to hear if he's all about that.
Yeah. Because that's very technical, and I'd love to know as well.
Yeah.
Okay, go to Rob Langley. It's two more.
I think that's similar, isn't it?
Yes.
Last one.
Absolutely, yeah, that's very much the same. And again, Rob Langley talking about that song again. If you're trying to do it without, yeah, and I don't remember it being A4. I love you, baby. It's that thing. I think it's E4, unless you sing like Michael Bolton's bloody version, because he always does that, doesn't he?
Bloody Michael, bloody Bolton.
Bloody Michael, always faffing. No, I love him. He's an absolute guilty pleasure. But if by nasality, it is, isn't it? So if by nasality you just mean like with that, if you genuinely need the larynx move upwards and not fight that, and by that you get a brighter sound and a fuller sound, that's great. It may be that you're just allowing the larynx to raise. You're allowing your vocal tract to shape itself appropriately to the note of A4. Whereas if you were to not use nasality, if that's what you're talking about, and try and lower the larynx, and it is absolutely exhausting to do that. And that's the question of the larynx, not nasality. So maybe that's what you mean. If you do, get it, mate. Totally get that struggle. But if you mean nasality, I don't know.
Yeah, and I know I've definitely experienced, especially again with more rockier singers in the past that have tried to do exactly what Rob's saying here, which is they've developed this approach A, B flat, B, C upwards that enabled them initially to make the sound and then develop stronger that kind of that thing in order to get some presence in those high notes. Then we're talking about, okay, especially further on down the line, changing that posture to something that is quite different in order to create the sound that maybe a warmer, more less bright, less twangy, less sound. So I think the issue is that that it can often what really helps at that time you may be able to create it a different way, but it may be looking at those notes in quite a vastly different way altogether in order to approach them. That's definitely what I found with some rock singers in the past. They can do it one way and it works out really well, because that's what's enabled them to do it in the past. But in order to get this more warmth in the sound, if that's what we're after here, it can often mean approaching it quite different and retraining it a little bit on that. That's just my experience with guys A up. Because if we're talking vocal fold positioning, we're talking, as you said, larynx position. It's just relearning a little bit there. Because that's often where, sorry to rant on, but that's where the brick wall often comes with guys, right? And that's why we would do whatever we can to hit that note. So retraining.
That thing.
Do that again.
That thing. Yeah.
That thing.
I thought that's pretty good. I thought that was going to go a lot worse.
Never do that again.
It did go badly then. Yeah, only for our relationship though. Mate, who am I? Some kind of goon. We did get another question on email from Esther, separate to this. So Esther said how to combat temporary nasality from dairy or the beginning of a cold. Best ways to warm up and cool down and take care of the voice in these situations. She's in Australia, so it'll be 1 a.m. there, so she definitely won't be with us. There's no getting around a cold, is there, Steve?
I'm so sorry?
There's no getting around a cold, is there?
No, not when. I mean, again, I'd say like the kind of anti-nasal effect of a cold is what we're talking about. Is the blockaging. As we said at the start, we should, with a lot of sound, we should be able to get away with them not feeling weird when we have blockages in the nose. But M's and N's and all that kind of stuff, as you just said, there's no getting around it, because there will be some of that traveling through. If it's blocked, you're going to get a different response. Unfortunately, what it comes down to, guys, is how can we avoid getting cold in the first place?
Oh, here we go. Bloody evangelist. The Dalai Lama. Here he goes. Right, so it might be worth pointing out that if you happen to be a singer with quite a bit of nasality, even in the vowels, when having a cold, you're going to sound vastly different. Anyway, and if stylistically that means if nasality is present, but you sound awesome, who cares? Who cares anyway? If it's an emotive sound, if it sells records, for instance, you don't need to cure it. Because nasal resonance isn't really a resonance, it's a bit of a resonance killer, if you like, which the opera singers use to their advantage. If you're a contemporary singer singing with low energy anyway, and you also have the nose contributing to sucking away even more of that energy, the only thing that I think that bothers me about nasality beyond the sound of it is the efficiency of it, and just the fact that, in singing, we often need much energy helping us out as possible in that voice quality, especially if you're professional, because if you've got an inefficient voice and you do 5 gigs a week, it gets difficult. It's pretty tricky. And to increase resonance a bit by boosting it in the right spaces can only benefit you, you know? So that's the only reason, we're not actually, in the end, matching nasality. Quite often it sounds stupid, but sometimes it sounds like Ray Charles. He's got a bit of a honky nasality going on. He sings absolutely amazing. And I don't know, did it bother him? He had a long career. Did it bother him? I don't know. I think doing loads of heroin was probably worse.
Do you?
There was a delay on that one, Steve. Your reaction was very late on that one. I thought I might have gone a bit too far.
I mean, I think it's a cracking way. If there's ever a way to end a webinar, I think it's on the effects of heroin abuse.
Anyway, Jamie Foxx taught me that in the biopic, right? It's true.
Great.
Anyway, what a great webinar, I think. We had lots of people registered, so thanks to everyone that did join us. And again, providing us with all that content in the form of excellent questions. We actually got through them all by the looks of it. So no doubt we'll be seeing you guys again. Please do get along to our website, thenakedvocalist.com. Search us on Facebook. We have a brand new Facebook group full of great conversation, and normally people sort of praising us, which is why we opened it in the first place. And don't forget to tune into iSingmag every time there's something coming out. We do a webinar every month or every issue, and there's so much more value in there. Did you read the last article? You might have missed it, on reflux and how it's often a lack of stomach acid, and which is, I know, something you've been talking about for a long time.
So, you're breaking up a little bit there, mate, but I've heard about reflux and the lack of stomach acid. What is that in relation to? An article?
Yeah, interesting, last time around.
Yeah, brilliant. Love that. Yeah, because it's just been, we won't go into it now, but it's so fascinating, the research on the stomach and how we've been kind of doing the wrong thing over the years in trying to reduce stomach acid when the inadequate amount of stomach acid in the stomach is the problem in the first place. It's really fascinating. So yeah, check that out for sure, singers.
Really fascinating. That's in the last issue, the most recent issue of iSing. That's in there. And I'll tell you, that's an incredibly valuable article. Anybody who's suffered from digestive problems like reflux.
Yeah.
So please do get on that. Yes. Thanks to everyone. Thanks to you, Steve, as well. Nice to see you.
Oh, no. In a way. In a way. No, it's nice to see you, thanks, mate.
All right, mate. All right. I don't want to talk anymore.
Thank you for everyone for joining us. Thank you for your support. Cool.
And we'll see you soon.
See ya.